How much in each group? So we're going to look at lessons 8 and 9. We're going to look at division problems that help us find the size of one group and do some other digging. So today's goals. I can tell when a question is asking for the amount of one group. I can use diagrams and multiplication and division equations to represent and answer how much in each group. And I can also find the amount in one group in different real world situations. So make sure you have today's date, your ICANs, and you're ready to move on. Okay, we're going to do a quick number talk here about greater than or less than 1. So taking a look at these, which of these would be greater than or less than 1? We got 1/2 divided by 1/4. Yeah, this is going to be greater than, isn't it? Because we're going to cut this into fourths. We're going to see how many 1/4 we can get out of 1/2. What about here? Yeah, because we're looking at how many 3/4 we can get out of 1. So this is a greater. What about here? Yeah, this is going to be really close to 1. It's going to be pretty close. But if we make this into groups of 8, we're probably going to get something actually, or 7/8, because that's nearly 1, isn't it? So this is actually probably going to be a little less than 1. What about here? 2 7/8 divided by 2 3/5. Well, we've got something that's greater than what we're dividing by. So this should be greater than 1. That should be a G. All right, we're going to talk about how much is in one batch. So I've got to make 5 batches of cookies, 10 cups of flour are required. How many cups of flour does each batch require? So a couple ways you can think of that, right? 5 times something gives you 10. 10 divided by 5 gives you something, which is the number of cups per batch, which is, 2, right? Looking at it both ways is just a different way to help us interpret and see what our answer should be. Let's take a look at some other examples here. To make 4 batches of cupcakes, it takes 6 cups of flour. How many cups of flour are needed for one batch? So what would be the multiplication here, right? Well, think back here. 5 batches times something gave us 10. So here it's going to be 4 batches times something is going to give us 6. What about division-wise? Yeah, we know we need 6 cups of flour in 4 batches. So how much is one of those batches? Yeah, so on this one, it's going to be what? Well, it is going to be slightly more than 1, right? Because 4 times 1 gives you 4, which is less than 6. So it's 1 and something, because 2 times 4 would give you 8. So that would be too much. And actually, this is going to be what? Yeah, 1 and 1/2, right? It does say to draw the diagram, and the diagrams are fantastic to draw, and that is at your discretion at this point about drawing them out. If you're still having struggles with how these work out, the diagrams can help a ton. Make a half batch of rolls. It takes 5/4 cups of flour. How many cups of flour are needed for one batch? So how does this work? Yeah, we have, again, like we did up here, we have 1/2 batch times something is going to give us our 5/4, right? Or we can think of it as the 5/4 broken up in halves. How many halves can we make out of it? Yeah, so for this one, what do we get? We end up getting 2 and 1/2. And if we think about it, 1/2, this says 5/4. That's 1 and 1/4. 1 and 1/4 plus 1 and 1/4 makes 2 and 1/2. So here's the diagrams for those ones we did before. We had the 4 batches, used 6 cups. How much is in one batch? That one we just talked about, 5/4 cups is half a batch. How much is in one full batch? Okay. We didn't do this one, but on this one, they were still trying to figure out how much was in one batch. You did 2/3 of a batch and you needed 2 cups. So yeah, you need 3 cups for one batch. So these are just different ways to help you map out those. These two are very similar to each other because in both parts, we've got some part of a batch and we know how much we need for that one part of a batch, and we're trying to figure out what is the whole batch. Whereas here, we've got more than one batch being made, we've got more than one whole being used, and we end up with a mixed number used for each batch. So it's looking at in a different angle, but still thinking a lot of the same processes. So when we think about it, when you've got something like 7 divided by 1/2, we can think of it in 2 different ways for multiplication, right? We can think of something times 1/2 gave us 7, or how many groups of 1/2 are in 7, or we can think of it as 1/2 times something giving us 7, or 1/2 of some number is 7. So this goes back to what we were talking about before. We can think of the multiplication and the division together. And sometimes thinking back on what the multiplication would be helps us to process out what that answer for the division is going to be. All right, let's look at a couple water containers. So we've got one picture here that's filled to the 3/4 mark of this entire container. We see that water being poured into a different container, and we've got some filled in there. Lynn says, I see a fraction of 2/5. Jada says, I see the fraction 3/4. Well, Jada is talking about here, right? Lynn is talking about here. So how many liters of water fit into this dispenser? Well, if this is 3/4 of 1 liter, it's 3/4 of 1, right? So we need to take 3/4 times 1, which gives us 3/4 of a liter. We could also think of this as 1 liter divided by something. Oops, I meant 3/4 divided by the 1, giving us the 3/4. Or if we wanted to figure out about how much we had for the 1 liter, we could work through a different way. If we did 3/4 divided by 3/4, that's going to still give us the 1, because any number divided by itself is going to be 1. Okay? All right. Not quite where I was supposed to go there, but I think that's still good. Let's talk about amount in one group. We're going to do a couple of these. So let's look at this first one here. Jada bought 3½ yards of fabric for $21. How much did each yard cost? What's the multiplication look like for this one? Yeah, it's 3½ times something gives us $21. What about the division? Yes, 21 divided by 3½ gets us how much it costs per yard. So if we think of it in terms of a diagram, it's going to be something less than 7, right? Because 7 times 3 is 21. So it's got to be less than 7. So we have 3½ and we need to break that into I believe 6 groups. Okay, so I think it's 6 groups because we have 3½ Well, 3 times 6 is 18, right? And 6 times 1/2 gives us 3. 18 and 3 makes 21. So it makes sense that 6 is our answer here. Let's look at one more. 5/4 gallons of water will fill 5/6 of a bucket. That'd be a weird book. How many gallons of water fill the entire bucket? Okay, well, we know that 5/4 of a gallon will fill 5/6 of the bucket. We can also think of it as wait, no, that's not it. Because it's 5/6 of the bucket times however many gallons are in the bucket gets us our 5/4 gallons. There we go. Okay, so if we want to find out this, we're going to take that 5/4 gallon and we're going to divide it by 5/6 of the bucket. And that'll give us how much is that bucket's capability of holding, which is what? Yeah, well, this is 1 1/4. That's 5/6 of it. So really, if that's 5/6 is 5/4, so each one of those 6 is 1/4, right? So 6/6 would be 1 1/2 gallons. So real quick, how long is a trip? If 2/3 of the trip is 4/5 of a mile, what is the one group we're trying to figure out? We're trying to figure out what the one whole trip is. 2/3 of the trip is 4/5 of a mile. So this is 2/3 times something gives us our 4/5 of a mile. 2/3 of the trip gives us 4/5 of a mile. Thinking of the division, you're going to have 4/5 divided up by 2/3 is going to give us the entire trip. In our tape diagram, if these two parts together are 4/5, what's the entire trip? Yeah, but each of those would be 2/5, so the entire thing is going to be 6/5, or 1 1/5 miles. So using the division or using the multiplication can help us understand why the division has to work out the way it does. Okay. All right. A shade over 15, but I told you it's double lesson. So thanks for watching.